I know that your resilience is based on what you tell yourself a lot of the times. When those thoughts would creep in, I'd be like, look, just ignoring it doesn't work either.
It's
It's
yeah.
still there, right? So you have to acknowledge it. And I go, okay, I do this thing as a coaching technique called reframing. What else is possible, right? So I can accept that, or I could believe that this will work out. There were days when I thought, well, I never get a job, all those sorts of things. But the reality was I was doing a lot of interviews. I mean, it's not like people were not taking my phone call, but here's a lot of things that I heard from men who were being very supportive at the time. Treat getting a job like having a job. I mean, honestly, that would have been the worst advice for me. It's like, when you're lying in bed and you think, I've got to get out of bed, and you kind of go, one, two, three, you get out, right? Or you have the choice just to lay there. Something in me in those moments just says, have a go. And before I've even really thought about it properly, I've said it or I've done it.
Running a business can feel lonely, especially when the decisions get heavy. Welcome to CEO Whisperer by Sarah Jain. Practical insights from the boardroom and the meditation cushion. I'm Saurabh. I've done 10,000 hours in 3 major parts of my life. I've spent 10,000 hours being a CEO, 10,000 hours being a board member, and 10,000 hours meditating. What we're going to do in each episode is really unpack a real business challenge that a CEO is facing and see if we can work through it together. Enjoy. G'day guys, Saurabh here from CEO Whisperer. Today we have Sarah with us. Sarah, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So my name is Sarah Derry, and I'm a mother. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm someone who cares really passionately about making a difference. My philosophy is all about connecting people to their potential. So whether that's individual, teams, others. Right now, I'm Group CPO for the Star Entertainment Group,
CPO, good people?
Chief People Officer.
For Star Entertainment?
Yes, at the same
Is that the casino Star, is it?
it
Okay, cool.
is.
Yeah.
Yep, we operate 3 casinos in New South Wales and in Queensland. I also am chair of a not-for-profit board. I run my own consulting business, and I'm also the founder of a women's network called Women That, which is all
Yeah.
about inspiring, influencing, and creating change for women in travel, hospitality, tourism, and accommodation and events. So that's what I'm currently doing. But I have been a past CEO twice. I did a sprint role for 12 months for a not-for-profit, which was amazing after my role at Accor. And recently I was Accor CEO for the Pacific region. 21,000 team members, 400 odd hotels. And my background leading up to that was, I ran my own business, but I also was really in the HR space. I came from operations, went into HR, went into entrepreneurship, and then I went back into leading organizations as CEO.
So you're full-time at Star, so
Yes.
you're doing like 1.5 FTE kind of thing.
Yeah, pretty much. At the Star, it is a full-time role, so I'm really there, Monday to Friday, on call when needed, and so on. And I just fit the other things around it, obviously evenings, weekends, those sorts of things. With my own consultancy, it's very much around very bespoke projects that we're doing, and a lot of it is around executive coaching, often for startups and entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. So the way we run this podcast is we talk through an idea that's kind of top of mind for you, something that's causing you some grief, and we workshop that together.
Yep.
So what is top of mind for you right now?
I think there's 2 things. One is that in the last couple of years, I've made some personal transitions, and, I'm really starting to think about what's next. What are the next things that I'm going to be doing? That's one thing that's top of mind. I think a lot of people, when you've had a very fulsome career like I have, it's really about thinking about what is the really interesting work that you're going to be doing. And so up to, probably 2 years ago, I had very steady career, and then I was in most jobs for over 7 years, 10 years at a time. So in the last 2.5, I've moved around a little bit, and that's been good, but it's also, I think, the stage of career I'm at as well. So that's one thing that is topical for me, and just thinking about the next stage of life as well. And the other thing is I'm, very much in an environment where there's a lot of change, and the demand is to, be resilient in that change, in that we're going through restructuring the business right now. And that's really necessary for the financial stability of the organization, which ultimately will be really good. But it's this challenge of how do you navigate, my role as Chief People Officer, taking care of people through that process, but making these really tough calls as well.
Yeah.
Knowing ultimately, and what I try to keep my eye on is that thinking about what the future. So there are probably 2 things that are very
What
topical
is
for me
the
right now.
first one, right? Because
Okay.
that sounds nice and meaty. So it's really about. So obviously you've had your two CEO roles.
Yep.
You've done a bit of a side kind of hustle. You've got the chief people officer role,
Yeah.
and you're trying to figure out like what's next, right?
Mm.
Um, Tell us the background. Like, how did you get to your first CEO role? How did you get to the CEO of Accor?
Yeah, it's a really interesting story. I've been very fortunate in my career. If I really start out at the beginning, I had not really intended to work in hospitality and travel and tourism. I finished university. I was thinking about going in media and communications. That was sort of what I hoped to do. But I got to Sydney, needed a job, and I got a fabulous opportunity working in a Sheraton hotel. And that was just to basically
So it was luck. It was just
luck,
luck.
just covering the bills,
Most
right?
of our careers happen by luck, I reckon.
They do. And I remember there's a couple of things I remember. I had no experience in the field at all. I started out in food and beverage, and it was just luck. They needed people who were kind of like extroverts for basically a theme bar where we would, and they were going to teach us the skills. And I think that's the great thing about the industry that I've been in the last 30 odd years is you can still learn. It's one of those ones where, having the education is important. It has definitely helped me along the way, but there's so much on the job training. There's so much you can learn. So that's how I sort of fell into the industry. And honestly, I just fell in love with it.
Why do you think that's a thing in hospitality? But it's like so that's not a thing in most other industries. Like there's a very heavy training growth. Like you've got dedicated trainers, right? You've got dedicated
Absolutely.
courses.
Yeah.
You rarely see that in any other industry. Well, why is that?
Well, I think if you think about like we have a very big workforce that is frontline. So working in your restaurants, your hotels, at the front desk, those sorts of things. And a lot of that workforce actually comes through they're either part-time university students or they might be people who, have not had the privilege of having a tertiary education.
Mm.
So to bring them in to the business, we need to train
You
them
have to
up.
skill them up.
We have to
And I
skill
guess
them up.
the work you give them is actually quite repeatable, right? And it's easy to document.
It is.
Yeah.
And then what happens is that, people a bit like me, you kind of fall in love with the industry or you're really good at that technical skill, whether it's in housekeeping or food and beverage. And then you get the opportunity, okay, well, why don't you supervise a group of those people? And that's ultimately what happened to me. Then I started supervising, then I went into managing. Eventually, I then transitioned into human resources. I went back and studied.
What made you go into human resources? What pulled you there?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I started out working in hotels, I was always the person who would train the new person who came in. I'd write the standard operating procedures. I just really loved the idea, I think, of being part of people's development just from the very, very beginning. And I saw it as an opportunity to kind of, share something that I'd learned because I'd been very privileged to come in and not have any background in this. So that's how I first came to get really interested in the learning development and the human resources. And I really, in my life, I have always really believed in this idea of strengths and the idea that every single person has strengths that can be utilized. And I think that I saw an opportunity if I went into HR, I could do that as my job. Like, who wouldn't want to do this full time? Like, how cool is that to help people get into jobs where they can be successful, like what was happening to me in my career. So that's what kind of sparked it in the
And which
beginning.
part of HR did you start in?
It's interesting stories. In hotels around the world, usually there's like a 9 a.m. briefing where you come in, sit around with the general manager, and everyone kind of says what's happening in the hotel, how many rooms we've got, VIPs coming in, etc. And the payroll person hadn't shown up. Now, this is the era, let's go back 30 years here, where it's still
So
paper timesheets, right?
Yep.
And so they said, oh my gosh, the financial controller said, we need someone, is anyone available just to come and help tally up the payroll timesheets? And I was back studying HR part-time, and I was like, payroll, paying people,
HR, kind of similar. Yep.
so I said, look, I'm free to help because I was doing a duty manager role for front office on that day. So that's basically how it started. And then I never got out of the payroll role. And they said to me, when I do payroll, and actually that's when my first real negotiation around my career kicked in. And I said, I will, because that's part-time, but I want to do HR the other couple of days a week. They said yes to that, which was great, but then they wanted to lower my salary because I was coming out of operations as a venue manager, manager on duty, and the HR role effectively was paid less. So again, second negotiation kicked in and I said, great, you've agreed to the role I want, but I don't want to drop my salary. And the good news is, obviously they agreed and it was mutually beneficial.
What gave you the courage to have that conversation? Because a lot of junior people early in their career just don't, right? They're just too afraid to have that conversation.
Yeah. I think at the time, and it wasn't because I felt like I was holding all the cards. So it wasn't around, a lot of people go, it's like that poker strategy and that. For me, it was just like this line in the sand. Like I'd worked really hard in my career to become, a venue manager. Then I was moving into front office, and I did have an option at that point to go the general manager route, but I really wanted to go into HR. So I thought at the end of the day, the most important thing was I got the job doing the part-time HR. And I thought, well, let's have a go. Something inside me just was like, ask for it. The
Yeah.
worst they can say is no.
If they said no, would you still have taken it?
I think I would have, but I did hold out twice because they did push back the first time. And I remember the HR manager at the time was trying to talk me into doing this. She took me to lunch in a restaurant. We had a lot. I still remember it to this day where we were sitting in that hotel, and she tried to convince me. And I said, I really want to do it, but can you just adjust the salary?
What was the percentage difference?
It was nothing in those days. I
So
think
she
it
could
was
have
like,
done it if she wanted to.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So it was, and I think, look, she was being responsible, and I can appreciate that. But again, I think
You've got to be responsible.
I've got to be responsible for myself. I'd worked
Yeah.
hard to get to that salary point. I remember it. It was, and I didn't want to go backwards.
I guess you're gainfully employed. You're in the building anyway. You could always get back to your old role.
Yeah. So I just thought,
Yeah.
why not ask? And look, there's been many times when I haven't asked for things and I've regretted it in my career sometimes. But I think most of the time I will just have a go.
Yeah.
And I just take that view. Like, what is the worst thing that's going to happen?
Yeah.
They say no.
Okay, so you got your HR gig,
Mm.
you're moving up in the ranks. How did you get the CEO role? How did that transition happen?
Okay, so through my career, I eventually went into the HR space. I got out of operations. I specialized in that. But I'd always had this burning desire to have my own business. And I think it's just my nature. So I value freedom.
Your parents had their own business, or
Nope.
you saw someone?
No, I'm probably a bit stubborn. And so I always had this idea, and I just wanted to do something that was doing the things I loved all the time.
And so, and valuing freedom, is that you want to make your own choice in life?
Make my own choices, make the decisions.
Is it a healthy disrespect towards authority as well?
A little bit, yeah. I was trying to think about how to say that.
I reckon all the CEOs have that.
Yeah.
Until they realize that they've still got a boss.
Yeah.
They've still got a chair or a board or someone international.
Yeah.
But you get more control over your destiny, right?
Totally. 100% it was that. Frankly, I just don't like being told what to do. That is the reality. But you're absolutely right. You have a boss, no matter who you are. Even, there's very
That's
few
the
people.
unfortunate reality. Everyone's always got a boss.
So I started my own business. That was great. And Accor actually was one of my clients. And I was doing some great work with them. And I had been doing that business for about 10 years. And I had a couple of contracts that
What was your business? What were you doing?
It was called People Reaching Potential, which is essentially what I was doing. So we were
like a training, L&D.
Yeah, learning and development. I became a qualified executive coach. We did a lot of transformation and culture work. So the work that I was doing at Accor was helping set up their inclusion and diversity policy. I was executive coaching a lot of their executives. We were doing a strategic learning and development programs for them across their business. So that's what we were doing. And so they were one of my clients. I sold off a part of my business, basically some contracts to another consulting firm. And I sort of had this gap. And I was like, what am I going to do? And someone said to me, gosh, the HR roles up at Accor? And I must have just for a split second gone, that sounds interesting. And at that point, then I met the CEO at the time.
Did you already know the CEO?
I knew him not that well, but I remember the interview we had. He was a great CEO, Simon McGrath. And I remember the interview with him. And at the end during the interview, he said to me, Sarah, can you be told no? And it was one of those questions that stopped me. I was like, and I remember I said, yes, I can, if I understand the why and so on and so on. And then at the end of the interview, he said, oh, Sarah, do you have any questions for me? So I was the smart ass. And I said, can you be told no? Mm. And then that was the moment, I think, we clicked, we laughed, and we worked together very successfully for 6 or 7 years at Accor. So how did I get in there? So then I joined as their head of people for the Pacific region. And I was very fortunate because I'd been an entrepreneur, because I had run P&Ls and come out of operations. He was just incredibly generous, Simon, who gave me, be a director on this company for Accor, help with this transformation project, set up this part of the business. So all the way along, I was never just in this lane of doing HR, because I've always had this thought, I'm a business person first. HR is just my area of specialty. That's how I've always approached it. And he was a sort of leader as a CEO, which I really respect. If you were capable and then he'd give you a project, he'd just give you more and more. So
Did he come from an HR background?
No, he came through operations. He started out, I think it was in housekeeping and hotels. went into food and beverage and then worked his way up. So again, he was, and he is incredibly driven, one of the most driven people I've worked with. So he just had this desire to kind of be successful. And so I suppose I was enabling him and I was helping him. So if I would deliver something for him, he'd give me more. So how did I become the CEO? So he resigned effectively, which was a total shock.
Into retirement or just?
He went and joined a casino firm as CEO for them, and it was a total shock. And I was the first person he told, and he told me, and I was in total shock because I thought he was going to be there forever. I really hadn't thought about being the CEO of this company. We had talked about going and being a CEO, but it was always somewhere else. So he told me in the morning, it was about 8:30 in the morning, and in the same conversation about 5 minutes in, he said, "Are you going to apply for the job?" And I was like, "Literally, I've just heard you leaving." But of course I said yes. And so it was an arduous process.
Had you thought about that before, like the moment he told you he was resigning?
No, no. I sort of went through this process, it's almost like a little grief process. Within the first 5 minutes, I was like the shock, the sad, the angry, and then I was like, okay. And I was like, is this real? So I didn't really think about that. I just thought I had no concept of what it would mean for me at that point in time. Either applying for the job or getting a new boss. I was probably more shocked at the fact that he was leaving the company. But when he asked me, I don't think I said yes straight away. I think by the next day I said yes. But, obviously, as soon as he said that and he suggested
it was in your mind. Yeah.
It was in my mind. Because I've always, I've run my own business. I've always wanted to be in a leadership role. And so to have the opportunity to run the whole business, like, huge. I honestly never thought I would get the role, but I thought I'll just throw everything at it.
Australia, New Zealand, or APAC straight away?
Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific regions. So we also had Hawaii in there as well.
And was Simon going to recommend you for the role?
It's interesting to say that. He was in an interesting spot because we had a very senior executive team of, say, about 10 people, and pretty much half of them applied for the job. So he was in a difficult position. I think that if he didn't think I was capable, he wouldn't have asked me, and he would have been asked, do you think Sarah could do it? And I think he would have said yes, but he wouldn't have done it. But I think he would have thought there was maybe a couple of people who should be considered. So
that's often rare for like half the exec team to be considered.
Yeah.
Normally, and who was deciding? Was it a board or was it a global CEO?
No, we had a global CEO of Accor.
Yeah.
It was a combination of things. So there was they actually had an executive search firm based out of Paris, because we're a French company, actually run the search program. So it was
internal and external.
Yeah, I'm assuming they looked at it external, but definitely they put us through, like, I remember one of the sessions was one of those scenario interviews, and you had to respond to it. They put it up on the screen and you had to answer questions. I mean, it was really intense.
Well, why would they do that? Like, they already know you. You've already worked there 7 years. They've known all the other execs.
Yeah.
Why not just tap their internal networks to figure out who's the right person?
I think I wasn't the obvious choice.
Why was that?
I don't.
Because you're not ops, or?
I think because I wasn't ops, because I came out of HR. And there was probably a sense of, does she know how to run a P&L? What does she know about finance and so on? So all of it. So I think as a fairness, I think about French company, very egalitarian in approach in general. It was a fair process that was kind of put forward. There was a number of people who put their hand up. And so it was a fair process everyone went through. So
it's so different, because normally in like local Aussie companies, sure, you'll have running dogs, people you'll say apply, but you actually know they're not going to get the job. Especially for a CEO role, right? It's so critical, and you've known these people for like 5 years.
One of the people who applied, well, so I think if Simon didn't think I was capable of the job, he would have just said to me, Sarah, not the right time, etc. So he endorsed me without saying, this is your person. Again, because very fair, and he knew there were other people who were going to put their hand up in the process. I think what was interesting, and I remember the recruiters saying to me when I got through all this like testing and everything else, they actually recommended me to the global CEO because I had outperformed apparently on these assessments to what they expected. And so their job, they said to me, is it's now our job to sell you as a candidate. And then I got down to the final two, flew to Paris in the middle of COVID, and was interviewed.
What was that process from Simon leaving to you starting?
I would say at least 4 months.
4 months.
At least. So he resigned, I feel like it was in September, worked out his notice period, and then I started literally the day he left.
And were the because these exec teams realizing, half are competing for this role, was there still a veil of cordiality?
Yes, there was. One of the people who ended up applying, it was an interesting situation because here was I in the HR role for this team. So I was their support. He wasn't put forward as one of the candidates, so I actually had to go to global HR and recommend him.
That's ironic. Okay, so and how long were you the CEO of Accor for?
About 2.5 years.
So I've been through a similar process where I was company urbanized, publicly listed company in the prop tech space. So our CEO, they got rid of the CEO, a guy called Henry, fantastic guy, I'd worked with in two prior companies. Um, and they weren't sure who to give the role to. So there was like four of us that all wanted the role, the four in the exec team.
Yeah.
Um, so my first job when I got it was to sack the other three people,
Wow.
like proper Hunger Games, because you're kind of like, well, these guys wanted the same role. They're actually my competitors. Because the board actually got us to properly compete for 12 months for the role without making it clear that one of us will get it, but we all had to do our own little thing and do better than the other. So what was the tenure of your exec team after you joined? Because it's kind of hard work because you're their peer.
Yep.
Now you're their manager. They were your competition during this evaluation process.
Yeah.
How did that work out?
Well, it was an interesting because during the process, it kept dwindling down. Some of them didn't get through certain stages, and then it came down to the final two. Of who wasn't in my team was from another division.
Okay.
So at that point, they knew it was me.
So you're the last person standing from the exec team.
I was the last person standing in the final two. So at that point, they were aware it was me or somebody else. They were obviously dealing with their own disappointment at that time. My view was that I wanted to try and keep as much as the team intact. One person left within 6 months, went and started their own business.
How many people on your exec team?
About 8.
Okay, so
Right.
4 applied kind of thing. Okay, yeah.
Yep. And so what I did then was that was in an operational role. So my strategy was there were other people in the team. I gave them more responsibility versus bringing people in. In hindsight, perhaps I should have made more change earlier, but a lot of these people were long tenured people who, in my mind had done a terrific job and were contributing. It's hard to know if they were ever really, if everyone was 100% on board with what I was doing and the strategy.
And plus it's hard. It's your first CEO role, such a huge organization. You've just gotten it. You don't want to go and axe half the people straight
That's
away.
right.
Because that would look very bad. You have all this knowledge walk out the door as well.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it was because I came from HR, and a lot of what I'm about and who I'm about is about connecting people to their potential, as I said. And so these were people who are incredible contributors, a number of them still there. And so there was no reason to make that change. And I think, ultimately, this was the first year out of COVID as well for me as CEO. And we had an absolute cracking year. We hit
Everyone's traveling again, right?
Everyone was traveling again. We'd hit every KPI bar one. And both of my years, we did that. So
did your exec team see you as an authority figure, like the ones that were your peers?
that's a good question, and probably one you would have had to ask. You'd have to ask them, I suppose. But I didn't feel that they were. I do feel that they were supportive. I do feel that, but ultimately, you know, people sitting around that table wanted the job that I had.
And everybody thinks they're the best person for that role,
Of
right?
course, as I would have. And it was interesting. I remember when the global CEO actually rang and offered me the job without me asking. He said, "Would you like to know why I've chosen you?" And I said, "Yes."
Yes.
And he said there was one question he asked me in the interview when I was in Paris, and that question was, "Will you leave if you don't get the job?" And my answer was, "No, I care about the team. I will see them through," and so on. And that's the one, not the only reason, but he pointed that out as a
The
reason.
differentiator between who else he was looking at.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, and look, I actually have no regrets around my time at Accor. I loved it. And it was a time of great change. We were coming out of COVID. The company was making some global, strategic decisions, which I knew were coming. So, yeah, I'm just very grateful. But I learnt a lot. And I think it's in the same situation, perhaps I would have looked at the team, reshuffled things a little bit more, made a bit more change.
But it's hard. It's your first CEO role, right?
Exactly.
Like you wouldn't have known.
No.
You wouldn't have known. And so how did that come to an end? What happened after 2.5 years?
Yeah, so the company strategically made a decision to separate into two divisions. So the luxury division and what we call premium mid-scale economy. So I had been responsible for both luxury, premium mid-scale economy, and as CEO down here in the Pacific. And effectively they were creating a luxury division.
So there've been two CEOs
The-
for each division.
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically. And so I was left then with the remit of the premium mid-scale economy, which was quite large here in the Pacific. But instead of reporting to the global CEO, it would be reporting to a CEO based out of the Middle East. And ultimately,
He was like the global mid-level.
exactly.
Got it.
And ultimately, in the Middle East, in Asia and the Pacific, they placed a chief operating officer. So the role of CEO in its own right with the same scale didn't exist. So that was a redundancy, which I honestly thought I would never see in my lifetime and is quite rare. And people say, wow, does that ever happen to CEOs? Well, it does when you work in a large company because you can consolidate divisions and things like that. So that's how that change came about.
Did you have the choice to get that COO role, or was that never a thing for you?
No,
And why
no.
was that not a thing for you?
Well, I think it's also from the company perspective as well, right? I had a full remit as CEO looking after both divisions. And, you know, that was something that, it was still a significant change in scope and reporting and those sorts of things. So I think from the company's point of view, it was also about, putting more operators into those roles as well. But for me, it just would have been hard to step back to COO
Yeah.
in that organization. Now that's not, which is interesting, right? Because now I'm in a CPO, Chief People Officer role. But I think I also thought maybe it's just time. I'd been with Accor 7.5 years.
Manager in the Middle East, like your potential manager in the Middle East, that global mid-level CEO. What was their personality like?
Yeah, he very much concentrating the decision making in the Middle East, and so it there
Go
was
from having freedom to executing something.
Yeah,
That's
if you think about what I talked about at the beginning, like total freedom to centralized, right? And so what was also happening was that, and my role exiting was really the start of a lot of change. So the division down here has gotten a lot smaller. Most of the resources are now based out of Asia or in the Middle East.
And were you not quite ready for the global role, for the global mid-level market?
I'm sure. I think, again, the company, I had been in my role for, just at that point, 2 years. Do I think I was ready and capable? I do believe I could have done that. From the company's point of view,
They might not have seen enough yet, right?
they probably
Yeah.
had not seen enough at that time. Yeah, I would say.
It's a shame how companies lose talent because of restructures. Like, I mean, they make sense the perfect sense in an Excel spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
Perfect sense. I've got a high-level person here. I'll get two people that are more operators.
Yeah.
They're a bit more economical. Will be closer to the action. We'll consolidate decision-making somewhere else.
Yeah. And I think too, the other thing and I understand why companies need to make change, because obviously I had been there for 7 years or, more than 7 years. And so I suppose from their perspective, Australia and our region in the Pacific was also very independent. And so the company was making a change to be much more centralized, more consolidated, more, top-down decisions. So
And if you have an independent region with a phenomenally independent CEO, I'm sure,
yeah,
and you want to consolidate and get control back at the mothership or some other part of the world,
100%.
it's a different model, right?
It is. It's a totally different model. So the short answer is of course, I believe in my skills, my ability, and what I've been able to achieve in my career that I can do that. And I've gone on to do some other things since then. But the company, I understand why they were going in a different direction. And, knowing the sort of person I am, that wouldn't have been an easy
You
adjustment for
wouldn't have
me.
fit. It wouldn't be right.
No, a lot of people have said to me since, Sarah, the new structure, which, I hope they're very successful because I still have a lot of shares in Accor. So I want them
Yep.
to be very successful.
Yeah.
I love the people who are there, and I have, I've only got fondness for the time that I've worked there. And, if there was an opportunity in the future, I'd love to go back at some time. So, but I think the sort of person I am, I'm highly independent, I'm very ambitious.
I think you've been happy.
I would not have been happy in that model.
And if you've got the choice of a redundancy and you back yourself
That's right.
versus a role you're unhappy with, which by the way, most people would have taken that role because they would have been too afraid to go out in the open and go find another job.
Yeah.
So you did the redundancy, hit your bank account.
Yes.
Do you walk out straight away, or is it a transition period?
No, I was very fortunate because I was the first role to be going as part of this transition, and then I knew the next layers were going to start moving. I was able to have a number of months where I just knew. So that was really helpful. I think I had about 8 weeks where I knew and one of my colleagues knew, and that was just a time of adjustment. Like, just I actually went and got some.
How did you make sure you cared during that time, but your heart was still in it? Like, if you're just being told by your
Yeah,
company that they're breaking up with you,
yeah.
yeah, they want you to stick around and take care of the kids for 3 months.
Because it was a long transition. I just really cared. I think what I said to the global CEO still stood. Like, when he asked me that question, I was sitting there in Paris, and he said, "If you don't get the job, will you leave and quit?" Now, most people would have said yes in that moment, right? But for me, and I've always thought about this, and even in my current role, I think that there are all these other people, right? And it's not like I've had a bad experience. I've
But
had a great
but not
experience.
getting a promotion is different to being made redundant.
Yeah,
Being made redundant, someone's consciously said, "We actually don't want you around anymore,
yeah.
but hang around for 3 months and help us see this grow." And
Well,
regardless, you'll get, unless
well,
you had a golden handshake or something.
yeah, well, to be
Um,
fair, how it actually unfolded was they did say to me I could go earlier. I'm actually the one who said, "I need time and the team need time to transition." So that's actually because I knew this was gonna be a huge shock to the team because I'd been there. I was spearheading, even in my people and culture role before I went into the CEO role, our major initiatives, things like that. So this was go and it was quite celebrated when I went into the role, and I say that from the point of view as people were like, "Wow, a HR person going into a CEO role," even though I had this operational background. There was one element, and then obviously female. There wasn't a lot of female leaders. Honestly, I knew it was going to be a lot of shock. It's interesting because I actually was told when I was overseas, and so I didn't even tell my husband until I landed back in the country. So I was in a country.
how many days did you have between those two events?
It would have been about 3 or 4 days. I was very fortunate that I had a colleague with me at the time at a conference where I was advised, and, she was just a great support. She knew, I spoke with her, and I just knew I couldn't tell my husband on the phone, and I wanted to do it in person. But the reality is I'm a very s I have a lot of empathy. I really deeply care about things, but I do have a lot of strengths because actually when I was told, I went straight back into the conference and sat there and listened to the conference. And the next morning, I turned up at breakfast and said hello to some of the global leaders who knew that I'd been told that I was leaving. And I just, that was part of getting through. It was kind of, it's not an armor because I don't want to sound like I'm so tough and that, but it's a way of coping in a way. I just put
The strength.
okay, I just put the armor on in a way, got through it. And I just thought, okay, I just went into what's the next logical step.
Well, why not call your husband straight away? Because that's what most people do, call their partner as soon as something really good or really bad happens.
I wanted to be in a position when I spoke to him to say it was going to be okay. And
Is
so
that because you didn't want to have to counsel him and yourself?
that's right.
Okay, that makes
Probably.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I think because, I was in a foreign country a long way away. There was nothing he could do. He was there with our children. We were going through transition. We just bought a new house. Like there was a whole lot of like we were literally moving in on the Monday. And so there was a lot of things. I know it's I was more concerned about how he would react and that than me. And I wanted to be able I just wanted to be I wanted to be in a position to say it was gonna be okay. And so between when I was told by the time I landed on Friday, I had a pretty good financial deal on the table
Okay.
that I'd
So you
negotiated.
negotiated more. Thank you.
Yeah, go back to negotiation again. I had a pretty good deal on the table that Friday, enough that I could say to him, "This has happened, shock and awe.
We've got this many months of runway to
We've
find.
got
Yeah.
this," but I still hadn't finished my negotiation. So I said to him, "This is just now." And then
This is the first offer.
it's probably the second offer at that point. It was enough that, I felt
Then
comfortable.
how did you go back and get more money for redundancy?
Um, I just pushed for what I thought was fair and right. The reality is I was the first person, and they really couldn't make the other changes unless my role was not there. And then that's where else I got the time.
So
So that's
what was their alternative? Right? Let's just say you said, no, I'm not happy with the deal. I want X% more. And they say no. Like, what can they do?
would have been a standoff. Yeah. You would have
Well,
been
they'd have to then transition you to a more junior role.
all those things they have like legal consequences, right? And look,
They could have done a one-sided redundancy, right? You're redundant. It's not negotiation. Here, Sarah, here's the package. Please leave.
yeah. And so, I mean, I suppose I'm fortunate in that I'm what I would say to everyone is, whatever change you're going through and transition, no matter how wonderful a company is, get advice, understand what you're entitled to. But I also, look, I want to say this about Accor. They were generous, and they do take care of people. This wasn't a, Sarah, you haven't done a great job and you're out. It's interesting to say breaking up. They are breaking up with you, but you know, you can be generous in the spirit, and which they were.
Because it was them, not you, right? In the
Exactly.
breakup.
I mean, the reality was what they were doing made sense, and I knew that. And I just said to them, "This is what I think is fair." And I, was very forthright in what I thought was right
How
and
many
appropriate.
iterations did you have to go back and forth?
I think there was 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's so rare because I reckon 90-95% of the CEOs I talk to don't negotiate for themselves.
Yep.
I reckon the reason I've done well in life is 75% is negotiation, 25% is performance.
Yep.
But most people just don't do that negotiation. They don't feel the confidence they have. They don't feel they've got the confidence or the ability to do
Yeah.
so.
And I think it's interesting when you talk about confidence, because I feel like I feel the fear and I do it anyway. So it's a funny thing around, is it confidence or is it just, it's like, when you're lying in bed and you think, I've got to get out of bed, and you kind of go 1, 2, 3, you get out, right? Or you have the choice just to lay there. Something in me in those moments just says, have a go. And before I've even really thought about it properly, I've said it or I've done it. I leap in, maybe it's almost like, yeah, the physical action before I've really thought about the consequence. Because I think when you start thinking, you go, oh, all the things that could go wrong, or you go, oh, what if they take the offer off? That you could think all sorts of things.
And it's funny one, like it's one where you actually have almost no power in the situation, objectively speaking.
Yeah.
They can actually do whatever they want. There's legislation that says here's the minimums.
Yeah.
Yet you still did well out of it.
Yeah. And so I think, again, Accor, though, it is it's an incredible company, and they do take care of their people. And so I'm really grateful
Yeah.
for that. So I was very fortunate with who my employer was as well at the time. And, I wanted it to be amicable. They wanted it to be amicable. And so part of the reason I stayed for that period of time was I said to them, I think I and the team, we all need time to
Yeah.
adjust to the idea. And so that's how I ended up staying for those few months and working through. It wasn't necessarily, can you do this for us because it suits us? It actually was me saying, I would like to stay and help the team through, and myself, to be honest. So by the time the announcement, I think I knew it might have been October or November. It didn't get announced till early December. By that stage, I'd had time to process it. I went and got myself an executive coach who I did sessions with so I could kind of work through it. So by the time it actually became public in the company, I'd already processed, I'd already gone through all that. And so then I was able to kind of just enjoy the next few months wrapping up and doing the things I wanted to. And
Yeah.
I started thinking about what's next.
So talk me about this personal transition. So you finished up last day, they've disabled your email access, the money's in the account.
Yep.
What do you do next?
Oh my gosh, that was amazing. So again, I'd had plenty of time to think about what I was going to do. And I had such a long list of things that I wanted to do. So the first thing I did was I finished, I think it was a Thursday, and in March, the 1st or whatever, the next day on a Friday, I went to a conference with Future Women and I gave a keynote speak. And I thought, this is sort of the start of kind of this new whatever I'm going to do. So that's a Friday. And then on the Monday, I flew to Timor-Leste.
Whereabouts is that?
So just off Australia, so East Timor, where my niece runs a charity there building, trying to change education in Timor. And so I went and spent a week with her and these incredible little kids who have, like she's building these schools out of nothing. She's in her early 20s. She's given up her PE job to go, private equity job to go there. So I went from Taylor Swift on the Thursday night. That was my last event at Accor Stadium. Friday, I spoke at a conference. Monday, I flew to Timor, and I was up in the mountains in a place called Same, and with this school that's half falling down that she's repairing, and she's creating this incredible opportunity for all of these children and the community and employing people. So I did that. And so basically within my first 2 weeks, I'd had 3 incredible experiences, all very different. And so again, it was like putting myself in an uncomfortable situation. So I'm going to learn. And in a way, you're probably not thinking too much about what's next. And then I did multiple holidays for the first period of time. And it was the first time it was very liberating not having to respond to your phone all the time. I mean, with a European company, there was often late night calls, things like that. So
It's
I enjoyed that.
It also becomes a big part of your identity.
Yeah.
That you're Sarah, you're the CEO of Accor.
Yeah.
You're important. People need to call you. People need to ask you questions.
Yeah, I've been through a transition once in my career. I was with a company called Starwood Hotels, and I was kind of on this trajectory, and that's when I decided I'd start my own business. And so I resigned from there and started my own business. That was really insightful. So that's what, 20 odd years ago now. But I had, I was in the head of HR role, exactly what you just said. You were kind of important because you had this title, you held this position, people called you, etc. Suddenly you start your own business. You work out pretty quickly what are the real relationships and what are not. So I knew the minute I didn't have the CEO title at Accor, there's going to be certain people who were not going to,
Never talk to you ever again.
ever talk to me ever again.
Unless they need a reference.
Unless they need a
That's when they'll
reference.
call you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or they need
Oh, they'll probably just text you for a reference.
because I'd already been through that. I'd already reconciled that in my mind. And because I had my own business for that 10 years, I built up a business. And I worked out then actually who I am, my personal brand, has to be very different to my company
There's
and my
separation for
title.
that. Okay.
I created separation. So my whole business was basically me. I had a couple of people working for me. But I remember the first time I got a contract when someone actually, you put in your proposal and you're like, oh my God, what if they'll pay that money? Just for me. Who am I? I've got nothing behind me. I'm just Sarah. And I remember when that first contract came in when I had my own business, it was the most amazing feeling. And that's when I knew I would always be able to turn my hand to something. I could always create something for myself. And that's when that real belief kicked in about what I was, doing and offering, and I had something to value. The other thing
But a
that
lot of people experience that evidence, but that doesn't correlate into belief in them themselves. What was different about you?
it's a great question because you know what? I'm not sure that I am different to anybody else. I actually don't think I am. When I was CEO or other roles I've had, and people go, oh my gosh, that's Sarah Derry. And I go, who's Sarah? Because I'm just Sarah. Like that's how I see myself. But I think over time, I've come to realize that I do have, some, unique things about me. And it's probably the combination of incredibly driven and competitive, but really deeply caring and empathetic and want to do things with, in a putting human connection at the center of it. And I think and I also think I'm very fortunate. I grew up with this idea of kind of giving back and generosity and you're as good as everybody else. And I'm very fortunate. My grandparents shared that with me, my mother. So I think I grew up with that. And I think from a young age, there was a moment in high school where someone identified a talent in me, which was public speaking. And up to that point, I was a pretty average student, to be honest. But once someone said to me, Sarah, you're an amazing public speaker and da 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 da, the trajectory of my life changed because I had this self-belief in one area. Suddenly my maths got better. Not immediately, but over the next few years. Then, I mean, maybe up to that point, I would never have gone to university. So for me, there's been moments where people have kind of said, you're good at this. And then that has led me to
That sat
believe in
inside
myself.
you.
That's
Yeah.
that. And it stayed and also because I didn't have to be great at everything. I think that's the other thing. People think you've got to be great at everything and you've got to improve your weaknesses, etc. Whereas I just think, well, people have different skills and strengths. That's it. It's so simple. And you just got to leverage that. I mean, I don't have to be great at doing what you're doing. I just need to be great at what I do.
Hmm.
And I think over time, if you look at the evidence around you, you know that you can make a difference, that,
But I think
and I'm
what
good at making
yeah.
decisions. I know the things I'm good at.
Because the point I'm making, though, it's most people experience the evidence, but they don't experience the internalization that you did.
Why do you think that is?
Because most people don't attribute success to them.
How do
They-
we change that?
I think it's a deeply human thing. I think it's a deeply human thing. Probably evolved when we were in a tribe, right? Tall poppy. No one in a tribe should believe they can survive by themselves, because then they won't need the tribe. They won't stick together. Everyone actually needs to feel a tiny bit insecure in every part of their life. It probably works well for survival. Doesn't work well for happiness.
Yeah,
But I reckon that's just a deeply human thing that's hardwired into us.
yeah. And I can understand that. And this is not me saying that. I think I said earlier, it's not that I don't feel fear. It's not that I don't have moments of insecurity. It's just that there's something. It's like almost a physical push sometimes just to do it. Like, so I was in a board meeting this morning. I was anticipating there might be some challenges around things. And in my head, I had already gone into that board meeting, not knowing how I was exactly going to respond, but I had there could be a moment today where I have to lean in or be firm about something or disagree with something. Obviously, it'll be the board's decision, but I was kind of, readying myself for that moment. There's something, yeah, you're right. There is something sort of there that is just kind of, I talk a lot about, and I've been writing a book for the last couple of years, which, I'll get out at some point as well. And I talk a lot about core confidence. And I really try to work on this idea of, confidence is sometimes like a thermometer. Someone says you're great at something, so your confidence goes up. Someone says you're not, it goes down. Whereas I'm like, okay, what's at the core there? What can I hold on to that means I'm not going up and down? It's just marginally moving, but ultimately I still have that level of confidence. It's hard, but it takes work.
Did someone model that behavior for you?
Well, I just think early in my career and my life, probably more than anything, there was people who had a lot of challenge. Like I grew up in a single parent family, so I saw my mother take herself back to university, buy the first home, on low incomes and things
I
like
mean,
that.
back in those days, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so I saw that kind of level of resilience. So I think also my grandparents on my mother's side and my father's side as well, they didn't, no one, a very working class background and things like that. So I think just seeing people make do with little and still be very happy, I
And
think.
could it be perhaps if your mother went through that, she was very focused to make sure that you were self-reliant?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I think so. I definitely think. I mean, and my grandmother and my mum would always say, earning your own money was really important. So I think you're probably right. There's probably those messages that you're getting early in career, and also this message that I did get very early from my mother and her mother that no matter who you are, you're as important as anybody else. Like didn't matter if you were talking to the Queen of England, you are, and I don't know where they got those ideas, probably their grandparents as well, but that was pretty powerful to think that, because I remember sitting around the dinner table, like telling people, my parents had a dinner party or whatever, that I was going to be the first female prime minister of Australia. I don't know. There's part of me that, from my dad and my mum's side, there's certainly personality traits that have sort of come together.
Melded together.
And like with all of us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough. Okay, so you're out of a call, you're doing a couple of things, having some
Yeah,
holidays.
yeah.
How long before you start your next role? How long was that going?
It was about 5, nearly 6 months.
5, 6 months.
Yeah.
And why not to another huge CEO role, right? Like, why not?
Oh,
I've done 21,000 people onto a large organization,
yeah.
bigger P&L, because that's what most CEOs think.
Because I agree. And so that's why I wouldn't rule that out in the future. But in that time I had off, I had time to think. And to be frank with you, I was interviewing. I did a lot of interviews. I met a lot of recruiters. I met a lot of people. I went out and network. I mean, can I say the reason we met was during this
Yeah.
process. I had so many incredible people who would go, my gosh, Sarah, you got to meet this person. And that's how we met, right? So through those introductions. So whilst I was holidaying, it wasn't just doing that. I was meeting as many people as I could and recruiters. I was interviewing for different roles. And so I was going for roles and I would kind of get through it and go, no, this is not exciting me. And I got to a point where I was offered a role and I was just like, I actually can't work for the group CEO. Like I had decided.
And were these CEO roles or?
Yeah, so a couple of them were CEO roles, some of them were CPO roles, there's a variety of roles in there. So during that process of interviewing and kind of working out what I wanted to do, I got very clear in my own mind about what I wanted to do next. And so the things that were most important to me were, number one, who I work for. So my direct boss, that's the most important thing to me. I mean, I was very, very clear about that because I've had some great experiences in my career and we've all had not great experiences. But as I was going through the interview process and networking and talking to people, number one, who I work for. So I was super clear about that. Number two, I wanted to do work where I felt I could make an impact and I can contribute. That doesn't mean being a not-for-profit. It could be in a really commercial role, but I wanted to know that my skills and that were going to be valuable and I could make a difference. And then after that came title and everything else. So that's why I wasn't. Yeah.
Number one was something else. So
Yeah. Ask me about it.
as a strong, independent person, love control, healthy disrespect to authority, which I totally get.
Yeah. Yeah.
You suddenly found out you actually had none of that working for somebody else.
Yeah. Maybe.
Maybe number one was an environment where you experienced control.
Yeah. Maybe. That could be part of it. I think I was seeking if I was going to work for somebody else, it had to be a special kind of person. You're probably right.
That you could work with,
That I
that
could work
that
with.
would not mandate stuff to you, would it work
That's
with you, explain stuff to you?
that's probably true. And so that's why the who I work for was most important. And the title of the job I had became so not important. Um, because I
Well,
could,
why weren't you going for the group CEO roles? Like, you had a cracker job, you made your
yeah,
KPIs, running a huge organization. Like, most hotel hospitality companies would love to get someone like you,
yeah.
wouldn't they?
There's a couple of things that were going on there. Accor was the largest in Australia by a long way. So to stay within the industries I was in, I really needed to go overseas. And
I
my
guess there's only 3 or 4 jobs at the CEO level in Australia, whatever the hotel chains are, there's
yeah,
only
and the one I had was the biggest.
okay.
And so there's that.
And going overseas wouldn't work
Not
family-wise?
at that family-wise at that moment in time.
Okay.
My daughter was just starting university, my eldest, and my youngest was about to go into year 11. And
Yep.
so there wasn't an option. Now, I'm now on the, second year uni, third year uni, sort of with my
Yep, so they
daughter.
need you a bit less?
Yeah, the youngest daughter's about to, finish. So I think if an opportunity came up, I would now. So there was, and again, honestly, I had not made a lot of those decisions in my career. I was always, it's not the career was first, but I always tried to be there at the important moments. When I had my own business, I had a lot of flexibility. But when I went into the rest of the career, I mean, I was traveling a lot. I mean, if I think about my career for 30 years, I've probably traveled every week for 30 years. I mean, this is the first time I really don't have to travel if I don't want to.
You're at home. Yeah.
I can be home every night if I want to. So, and I think because I had this time, I suppose it gives you that perspective. Honestly, I've just not been someone who's really I'm not that worried about title. Now, here's what I say about that though. Once you've had the title, you're not worried about it, right?
But it's hard to go back. And
Yeah.
as a CEO or an ex-CEO, I'd always feel a bit funny recruiting someone to a CFO or chief people
Yeah.
or CTO role that's been a CEO before.
Yeah.
Because my initial reaction, paranoid CEOs would be like, that person wants a stepping stone to my job. And
Yeah.
that might be completely okay, right? If in 3 years I want to transition to something else, I need a good person to come up at some point.
And the truth is, I think that did impact me. That because when I was looking at some of the CEO roles or the CPO roles, big CPO roles, like that would have been the equivalent of my CEO role at Accor in unrelated industries, like big firms. I think that did work as a disadvantage because in my mind, I was really clear who I wanted to work for, interesting work, title didn't matter as long as I could have a bit of freedom, make an impact, do those sort of things.
Because people wouldn't have believed title doesn't
No,
matter. They wouldn't believe it.
they wouldn't. But that's why I always say, you know, it does matter because that's why I would never begrudge someone who's coming up and they go, "Oh, I want the GM title or I want this." Of course you do. I wanted it. The difference for me was I've had that experience. So I did do a 1 year sprint as a CEO after I left Accor. That was the first role I took.
And what was that organization?
It was called Homeward Bound, and it was a not-for-profit based out of Melbourne, but it was a global initiative to get women with a STEM background into leadership roles. And they were running leadership expeditions to Antarctica.
Fantastic cause, but can I put to you, was that a waste of your talent? Because I feel like you could do that with your eyes closed.
It was a bit, and it was a part-time.
That's why you're there 12 months.
That's why I was there 12 months
Yeah.
and part-time. And then what I what I was trying to do was, help the organization get into its next phase. So I learnt a lot in that experience. It wasn't something I could do 5 days a week. And that's when I, at the same time, started my own business. I was doing this board work and other things as well. I was actually writing my book at that time. And so I was very fortunate that they were very supportive of me doing that in a
Well,
part-time capacity.
why consider that instead of just going for that big CEO role? Or was that role not,
Everybody asked me that when
was timing wrong or?
yeah, I think that you have to be very patient to wait for the right role. And I think, it might have been another 6 or 12 months on to landing the right thing. And, financially, I could have done that. But something inside of me was kind of like, you know, try something, Sarah, do something. And I do remember when I said yes, a lot of people were like, wow, are you sure? And the reality of that was, whilst I really enjoyed my 12 months there, I learned a lot. And, I went on this incredible Antarctica adventure with some
But
incredible women.
it doesn't fit on the trajectory that you're on.
No, and so which is hence where I ended up where I am now, because I think through that process, I did work out that I'm best served right now with where am I here in the commercial space. And how I ended up where I am now was Simon, the ex-CEO that I worked for at Accor, recommended me to the CEO.
Because he went to the casino space, right? Yeah.
That's right. So he'd worked with the CEO at the Star Entertainment Group, and he recommended me to work there. And if it wasn't for him saying, you have to work for this guy, Steve McCann, who ended up being like, learned a huge amount with him, I probably wouldn't have entertained the job, to be perfectly honest with you, because I really trusted Simon. And he said, I think they need you, Sarah, and your expertise, because Simon knew what I was capable of doing. At that point, I was thinking, okay, I've tried the not-for-profit. This is definitely not me. I need to go commercial. And honestly, you couldn't go more commercial than going into the casino industry. And I did think I could make a difference there. So,
But I mean, I'm sure it's a fantastic role as CEO,
yeah.
but it just still feels like a waste of your talent.
Um,
Aren't you destined for greater? Or is it sometimes a timing thing? It's what you have in front of you.
yeah. No, I don't think it's about what you just have in front of you, because for me, I really I just was really wanting to work with people who are going to be able to work with me with, as we talked about, the style I wanted to work with. And honestly, I really care about the hospitality, travel, and tourism industry. And with where the company's at, I know that my role is pivotal in that business staying sustainable. And so there's 8,500 people's jobs at stake there. And it's not because of me they're going to stay there. They're all doing incredible work on the front lines. But if I can do something to be part of turning that around, and honestly, I did think it was one of the biggest turnarounds in Australian history, and to be part of that. And the other reason it was attractive to me was I've never done ASX company experience. I sat on a board of a small casino, Reef Casino, and that was ASX listed. But I did feel like there was a gap there in my knowledge around the ASX. So that was the other reason to do it. Thank you for saying I'm destined for greatness, maybe. But I don't think that, the chapters are not over yet. I think that I've been there a year now. We'll see what happens in the next 6 to 12 months. There are some really good people there that I want to help through this process and be part of that. But yeah, I've got some thoughts about what's next. But I think, if there was an incredible opportunity to go in as a CEO somewhere, the right type of organization where I could make a difference, absolutely I'd go for it. But I'm wondering if I'd just create that greatness for myself. That's where I'm at.
Common thing that happens to a lot of CEOs, you finish up somewhere, there might only be a dozen of your roles every year, right?
Yep.
In your industry, there might only be like 2 or 3. And sometimes you have to wait 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months to find the right role.
That's right.
So a common thing CEOs think about, in that transition, do I take a lesser role? So go back to a role that was more technical expertise, CFO, CTO, head of people culture, or CPO in your case, whilst I wait for the next one to come along. And maybe I'll be really happy and really effective in this role anyway. Will keep me out of trouble. I'll keep learning something. I'll enjoy myself. How did you make that choice to go back to a technical expertise and not to wait out?
How did I make the choice? I think I just weighed it up, and I just thought, genuinely, what was more important to me was to have freedom within a role than to be the person who was responsible for everything.
Okay, so you had the control that you needed?
Yeah.
And you got that. And how did you test that? Because in the interview process, everybody lies to everybody.
Yeah.
Employees lie to employees.
I had a very interesting interview process. It's a bit like what I said with Simon when, it was like one interview, he asked me this question I've never been asked for, then I asked it back to him. When I met with the group CEO, I went in there prepared for the usual, interview questions. It's not what happened. He spent 45 minutes telling me, being completely transparent about the organization, completely open. I almost didn't say anything for the whole interview, and that was it. And I walked away from that going like, that was pretty impressive to just instinctively just lay everything out completely honestly and transparently and trust me that I'm not going to go away and do something with that information. And then I spoke to one of his leaders, so one of the other executives, and talked to them. And by talking to them, that gave me the confidence that the person I'd met and the group CEO was that kind of leader. Yeah, so that's how I made that decision.
Okay.
I based it on the person and the experience I had with them. I thought was very authentic. And then I went and obviously, checked him out with a few other people as well.
A few third-party references, totally
Yeah.
got to do that. And probably helpful that you got a reference from Simon, so you would have known him. You had
Yeah.
a lot of trust in Simon as well, so that would have made it much easier as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I guess what you also have is like, you have a lot more roles in you, right? So this might not be the last role. You'll do this for X number of years, make a great impact,
Yeah.
something internal, external, you'll find something else.
Yeah.
Which I think, again, a lot of people don't think that far ahead. They don't see things in that long arc of time yet.
Yeah. I think one thing I've always thought, because I've always loved working and not everybody loves working. Like even when we're doing the toughest things, I've sort of thought, well, it's a privilege to be able to be here and, be part of all of that. So I've always thought that I was going to work for a long time. I think what what I'm
Well, why is that?
just because I've loved working and
Yeah.
it's given me a lot of satisfaction, and because I think, I felt like I've had a lot of success. Like I feel like, of course everyone has failures along the way. Not everything's gone perfectly, but I feel like I've had a lot of success. And so I think I've just thought I would always enjoy that. But I think now I think one of the things I'm really grateful for with the break with the core, because look, the reality is I would have stayed with the core had that decision not been made. And I'm not sure I would have had the growth I've had in the last 2.5 years that I've had if that didn't happen. So I've actually also reflected on that. It was the right timing, and I've actually learned and grown a lot as a person. And I think I'm actually better for it. So I think that has also made me realize that, time is not infinite. And there's many other things I want to do in this world. And so I'd always had this idea, like I'd always had my idea early in my career of having my own business. I've done that. I know I can do it again. I always had this idea, I had a book I wanted to write. And so I've got the book in draft form. I just haven't had any additional time to finish it off. So next up, I really want to, maybe I'm going to be CEO of my own large organization and start something up again. And then the foundation of it could be a book, which is all about a certain style of leadership that I want to share. And, that could be part of it, and I think I'm also at this point, and I've started, as a founder of an organization called Women That I mentioned earlier. I just want to give back because I'm very grateful for everything I've got. And so there's something inside of me too that, I clearly get a lot of satisfaction about, helping other people. I think that's how I ended up in the industry by default.
Yeah.
Because you're not.
It's a service industry, right?
It's a service industry. And someone said to me early on, you're not a servant, but you're in service to people. And that was a game changer, because you can imagine I left university, was going to go and do communication marketing. And then my family said, what are you doing working in restaurants? Isn't that a waste of your time? I think you asked me that question a few times, like, isn't that a waste? Aren't you doing? But for me, it made sense. I don't know. There's something, I'm just really clear. I don't feel like I have to be caught up in someone else's paradigm of what it should be. And to be honest, can I say this as well? I think as a female, we're not that hung up on titles. We're not that hung up on, I'm very competitive. I want to win, but it's not all about that. And maybe that isn't true. I know there's a lot of men who also maybe would feel that way, but I do think that, I've met a lot of CEOs and people and I think there's this. It's who they are as a person. None of this is actually who I am as a person.
I think what it is,
What is it?
especially for guys, that's all I can speak to. That's
Yeah.
experience. Haven't had the operation. So, for guys, a title represents power.
Yeah.
It's that you're controlling something. You've got power over something, and that's why for a lot of blokes, titles are super important, because that donates my worth to everybody else.
Yeah.
Like if you ask a guy to introduce themselves, it's never I'm a dad. It's almost never I'm a dad first. It's always, oh, I do this job in this company. Or when guys meet over barbecue, oh, what do you do for a living? They often ask about family later on. It's often about, what do you do for income first?
Yeah. And I think because I think I've been really fortunate in my childhood that I described to you, and then the experience I had in high school when someone said, hey, you're good at something, like it's one thing. I think there's something there around, I think I've said this a couple of times, I'm really clear about who I am and what I'm about. Like if people say to me, what do you stand for? I know. Now, then you could ask the question, well, when do you not live up to that, Sarah? Or when do you question the career choices you made or the companies that you're working with? Do they meet that? And sometimes they don't because life isn't perfect. But I think what happened is that in my early career, that moment when I started my own business, and there were people who didn't pick up the phone, and then there were people, this was amazing, who were kind of like acquaintances, hardly knew them. They were the ones who gave me the work,
Who did the effort? Yeah.
who went the extra mile, helped me, all those sorts of things. So I think then I learned, wow, gosh, you have to. And then because when I got that first contract where someone bought from me as Sarah Derry, I started getting this sense of self. And then when I was leaving Accor, I made a very conscious decision. A friend of mine, Stacey Ashley, who's an incredible leadership expert, said to me when I told her that I was leaving and no one else knew, she said, Sarah, you're who you are right now, your brand is a bit too deeply tied to Accor. Start working to shift that. And so the last few months as I was leaving Accor, I would, whether it was LinkedIn or other things, or what I was speaking about, I made it more about what I'm about, my personal
Not about
story,
your
what I care
employer.
about, not about my employer. So I feel like, I can stand on my own 2 feet. It's just who I am.
Couple questions though. So the last 2.5 years have been great. You've learned a lot, and it will probably give you that separation you need to find the next great thing in your career, which
Yeah.
I'm sure is inevitable. Would you have had the insight to make that choice yourself?
No, no, definitely not. And that's why, like, when I look back now, whilst that wasn't my decision to leave Accor because of the restructure, I'm grateful for it because I wouldn't have. I might have been the person who stayed, took the other job, been terribly unhappy.
Or you would have worked your way up. If the restructure didn't happen, you slowly work your way up the
Yeah,
organization.
yeah. And look, there was a choice probably a year before that to do something else within the company, but I decided to stick it out with the CEO role. And I have thought in hindsight, maybe that was the right decision. But actually, even now, I think no. I wouldn't, if that hadn't have happened, I wouldn't have made the choices I've made since then. And there's been too many good things that have happened in the last 2.5 years.
Yeah, fair enough. And how did you how did you not get damaged by being made redundant? Because perhaps it happened. I mean, unfortunately, my bias is guys because most CEOs are guys.
Yeah.
I don't know what the stats are. Like, must be above 90%, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah.
Um, but often when it happens to guys that I see, it's almost like an emasculating event.
Yeah.
And they just almost become a shadow of themselves and they lose their confidence and they don't believe in themselves. And in the same way, imposter syndrome, like you don't attribute the good stuff to you.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you start attributing the bad stuff to you. How did you not let that happen to you?
That was a lot of work, if I'm honest, in a way. But I think there was a few things that worked in my favor. I think because I've been an entrepreneur, I know I've done that before. I knew that I could start something if I had to. It wasn't like I was going to never work again. It was a
Well, a lot
choice.
of people actually think that. I'm going to get
I agree with that.
redundant. I will never work again.
But they're people who've probably been career people their whole life, right? With
They've
an
probably not
income.
done their own thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they've probably never done their own thing. So I think that's the difference, right? Is that I've proven I could do it for 10 years and successfully do it in my own mind. So I knew I had that to fall back on in my head. And I made that conscious decision to get the executive coach and actually work with someone early on and work through it. And the truth is, of course, there were days when I thought, well, I never get a job or, all those sorts of things. But the reality was, I was doing a lot of interviews. I mean, it's not like people were not taking my phone call, but here's a lot of things that I heard from men who were being very supportive at the time. Treat getting a job like having a job. I mean, honestly, that would have been the worst advice for me. So that was exactly coming from that place that you're talking about the insecurity. Like, you've got to be up at, you're used to getting up at 8:30, so you've got to be contacting everyone, booking in coffees, doing these sorts of things. I didn't do that. I did work hard at getting a job and working out what the opportunities were, but I also wanted to make sure I enjoyed some of this time. So that was one thing that was said to me, and other things I definitely, another person said to me, it was another male CEO said to me who'd been in a similar situation, he said, oh, he was actually, I felt in some ways depressed because the recruiters wouldn't return his call, or when he wasn't the lead candidate, they suddenly never heard from them. And he was sometimes sitting by the phone waiting for the phone to ring. Whereas I don't know if I had the advantage of being in the HR space. I get this game,
Yeah.
right, with the executive recruiters. I mean, there are a couple I really love and trust and who I've known for a very long time. So, but there was a lot of others that you are a commodity. You're a number. There's nothing wrong with that. So I wasn't waiting for the phone to ring, but I did hear comments like that a lot. And I was determined that wasn't going to be me because I thought if I let myself kind of get low or if I go that way, like, how does that get you out of it? Because, and people often say things like it's easier to get a job when you've got a job. You hear all these things all the
Totally,
time.
totally.
And you can let that be true or not. And so it wasn't always easy. But one thing I did do, and this came from an exec recruiter one of the ones I love, he said to me that he had a client who, whilst they were in this time off, had written a list of all the beaches in Sydney to go and visit. And there was apparently 100 or something. And so every week she would tick off a few beaches. And I think she got to like 83 or something by the time she got a job. So I didn't want to do that, but I did create a list. This was awesome. And it was all the things I hadn't been able to do in the last 10 years just because I didn't have time. Things like I'd never actually been to the Archibald Prize. There was some walks in Sydney I hadn't done. I wanted to go like the movies in the middle of the day. So I created this list, and I've still got it on my phone, of all these different things I wanted to do. And I just started ticking them off. So I still had meaning, but I didn't want it to be treated like having a full-time job, looking for a job.
But what was that subtle mindset difference that you had that stopped the damage? I get you intellectualized it. I get you got yourself very busy. I get you exerted control and did it on your terms.
Yeah. It was a mindset of it'll work
So you
out.
chose that mindset.
I chose that mindset. It will work out. It's how
Did you make yourself believe that, or did you just know that?
I think it's that evidence base. When I look back over my life and my career, the evidence is there that it'll work out. Like, I mean, I should never have gone back I had my own business for 10 years. Then I went back into corporate and became the CEO of that company. Like, that was not on the cards.
So that wasn't expected, right?
That wasn't expected. And I never planned it that way. Once I got in there, I started thinking about all those things. And I think it comes down to drive. A lot of this is about drive. Like, I'm very driven.
Explain that. Like, what part of the drive was you?
Well, I think it's that mindset piece of like, I know that your resilience is based on like, what you tell yourself a lot of the times. And when those thoughts would creep in, I'd be like, look, just ignoring it doesn't work either, right?
They stay.
It's still there, right? So you have to acknowledge it. And I go, okay, I do this thing as a coaching technique called reframing. What else is possible, right? So I can accept that, or I could believe that this will work out. I'll never get a job. The perfect job is just waiting. It might come tomorrow. And this was all I think maybe I'm really, this evidence piece is really important to me because when I think about it, if I was having a down moment, all of a sudden, the next day you get a call out of the blue from somebody about a job. Yesterday you didn't know you were going to have. So the evidence was pointing along the way that it would be fine.
Yeah.
You do have to make it. You have to make a mental choice about how you're going to show up. That's probably been true. It's a bit like when I was made redundant. I went straight back into the conference with a couple of hundred people and I sat there and I listened. I mentally, that took a bit of steeliness to go in there and do that.
So can I play that back to you? Perhaps what it was, so kind of summarizing your words, were the drive in you was so deep that you were going to get through this.
Yeah.
And that drive in you was not beaten out of you through this experience.
No.
Which maybe that's what a lot of other people that I've met, CEOs, the actual drive the drive and self-confidence gets beaten out together because they're tied together in their mind.
Totally. So the title is who they are. And therefore, when you don't have that, and then the confidence, and it's like this downward spiral, because the title was not who I was, the loss of it was sad, but I had enough self-belief to kind of, just pull myself out when I would have those moments.
And how do you teach that skill to your daughters?
Oh,
because they're going to have this experience.
I really hope that I have.
How did you do that?
I think I have. They will have to tell you though. Well, my eldest daughter is actually a musician, and I'm, she's, when I say musician, she writes music, produces, etc. When she was in high school, she started high school, and it was a school where they did have music, but for some reason she wasn't doing the music subjects and those sorts of things. And there was one day, I think at the end of year 8 or something like that, where she was really upset. She called me from school, and I turned up at the school and I had this meeting and I said, what's going on or whatever. And she was really angry with me, but she was just unhappy at this school, right? And in that moment, I decided she has to go to a performing arts school. And this was like in November. And again, my drive kicked in. So I rang every performing arts school, begged, could we send an audition tape in, etc. She did. She the next year went to a performing arts high school in year 9, I think it was. And she just flourished. And that was because, again, it was this idea of strengths and what you're good at. And I knew if she could do the music, it would flow onto everything else. And I thought, and you know what? She's at the best university in Sydney. She's at Sydney University. She's at the Conservatorium of Music, and she just did a 6-month stint in Berkeley on an exchange.
So it's come together quite well.
Yeah. And that's not because I did it. It's because she had it. And I've also said to her, like a lot of parents would say, don't do music. There's no career in that. Whereas I'm like, follow your dream to the fullest. This is my conversation with the genitor. Don't give up. And they're like, they roll their eyes at me and that. But I believe if I say it enough, I'm just saying to them, just pursue this to the nth degree. People are going to tell you no. Like she missed out so many times on performing. My youngest daughter, very different. She's at a completely different school and more academic, very driven. She's so self-driven, but I just keep saying to her, I actually have to say to her, don't be so hard on yourself. She got a driving license yesterday. First time out, very scary, but it's great. And I just say to them, I say to her all the time, you're going to be a CEO. You are going to run companies. If you want to be head of the United Nations, you will be. I've been saying this since they were little because Eva, who's my youngest, she was like such a master negotiator and still is. Like she can convince us to do anything. She gets everything, but she does it in this way like, well, it's so logical. It's almost hard to define. So we called her Banky Moon when she was a kid because we thought, she was going to run the United Nations negotiating team. And yeah. So I really have tried to have them focus on what they're good at. And I think the fact that they went to different schools was good. They didn't follow Eva didn't have to follow Angelina. They make their own path. And I just tell them that I think you tell people enough. It's expectancy theory, right? Mm. If you expect people to be great and you tell them they're going to be great, they will outperform. And I believe that in workplaces and I believe it with children too.
Yeah. And probably the last part of that, which you've kind of implicitly spoke about, is when they experience self-mastery is to personalize that experience.
Yeah.
That was actually because of them that they did well.
Yeah.
And then that just flourishes to other parts.
Yeah. It's really interesting because just speaking about the driving, they're both totally different drivers, right? And my husband taught my oldest daughter to drive, and she drives very differently to me and much faster. My youngest daughter, I mainly taught her to drive, and they're both great drivers, but they're very different, and it's interesting when you have those experiences. And so the day before I took her out for the driving, she had a driving test yesterday, and I was like, you are a great driver. And the only reason you're not going to get it is if something happens on the day. But I don't see any reason why you're not going to get your license tomorrow because she genuinely is a great driver. Now, that's not to say, like all the parents, if you're listening to this, of course, we had many arguments in the car.
Yep. Slow down. Stay in your lane.
So I'm not perfect at all.
Yeah.
But I do know, and I didn't say that because it wasn't true. I think there's also got to be on this. People, you got to be trusted and you got to be authentic. Because actually, I did drive with her, and she did drive incredibly well the day before. And I thought to myself, I actually can't see any reason why she's not going to get it.
Yeah. That makes sense. So if we go back to the original question, personal transitions, how do I figure out my next role? Perhaps if I can summarize your advice that you've said, it's not to repair the damage, but to actually choose not to get damaged.
Yeah.
And it's that self-mastery that you experience actually completely personalized. I was actually great at this role, and to deeply believe that. And then what you've done is you've taken the time. You've not rushed into the next spot. You've not made a job, seeking a job. You've actually given yourself, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however long it will be, right? For you to actually figure that out.
Yeah. You said that much better than I could have and much more succinctly.
We just summarize an hour and a half into a sentence. Anything you would add to that?
I think giving yourself the time is really important. And I think trying to work out what is important, spend time on that when you're going through a transition, I think is really important because, and I believe in the rule of 3 on a lot of things. And I'm able to go this, and this, is what's important to me in the transition. So, and I think when you have clarity in how you communicate something, it's much more believable. And also the other thing is, it goes back to the mindset piece. I think I talk about this a lot with clients, is that people, I think, use language against themselves a lot. They'll go, yeah, I could have done that better versus, you know what, I did really well. Next time I'll do this.
Mm.
And I think that's where we have to, we are talking to ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, the mindset piece and getting clarity and then being able to communicate that over and over and over again. You know,
Yeah.
people believe it, and guess what? You
You'll believe it
ultimately
after a while.
100%.
The other thing I'll touch on that is the time didn't happen by accident, right? Like if you didn't go back and negotiate, if you hadn't sorted out yourself financially, if you were living like paycheck to paycheck,
Totally.
you would not have had that time.
Yeah.
And that wasn't an accident that you had that time.
No.
So to actually go and negotiate for yourself, to choose in that moment to be extremely selfish and do what's best for you and your kids over what's
Yeah.
best for the organization, most people don't do that in the moment.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. I think the decisions I made around that by like not telling my husband. So there wasn't panic when I got home. I was in a
Because your husband would have said, just take any deal. Just get some money. You would have been a bad
it would have
counsel.
it would have been a bad counsel. But also I was in the moment when at the time, could have easily been the worst thing that happened to me and so on. I chose to focus on how do I communicate this to my husband with care. And you're exactly right. It was selfish, but the selfishness came for I need to care for my family. I want to take care of my kids.
Yeah.
And that's where the privilege piece comes into. I know that I am privileged. And there are a lot of people out there who don't have the opportunities I've had and, don't get these, chances in life. So I don't let
agree,
that
but I
go.
often think that success is not by accident. Is
Yeah.
that you probably created this privilege.
Yeah. But once you got privilege, you have to respect that you have
Totally.
privilege and other people
Yeah.
don't. And I think that and I also think that just, other people it's not that they can't create that success for themselves, but the reality is not everyone's life circumstances get them there.
But then conversely, I would be like, you're a female. There's not many female CEOs. You're
Yeah.
a single mom, harder upbringing. Well, I actually think you didn't have a lot of privilege. And I think a lot of the privilege you created was through your own hard work, through your ambition, through your drive.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. I think now that I know I've got privilege, I'm not going to take it for
Yeah,
granted.
now you do, yeah.
Yeah.
And hang on to it. Hang on to it. It's so
Yeah,
much more
for
fun than
sure.
privilege.
I'm definitely hanging on to it.
Yeah, perfect. Anything else you want to add onto that?
Well, I'd like to just ask you, do you have any advice around transition for people? Like, I mean, you've been, a great resource for me and over the last, 12, 18 months or so to connect with.
If I was to summarize it in a sentence, when you get made redundant, actually, I'll say three, four things. When you get made redundant, most people, it damages them. And then when they go for the next role, they go for the next role through a place of weakness. And you're not negotiating it as a peer anymore. The analogy that I always love is like Gandhi, right? So he had to negotiate with the British for a free India, and he had absolutely no control in that situation, right? Like he was literally a slave. There was probably not even a crime for him to be murdered, right? It
Yeah.
was probably totally okay. And if it wasn't, no one would prosecute it anyway. But he had to negotiate that because he was like, no, I'm actually your peer in this negotiation. And most people lose that. And that's why a lot of CEOs, they'll finish one role, they get damaged, be a shell of their prior self, and they'll find it very hard to get to the next role. So that's probably the first thing I'll say is
At the worst moment.
so that's what a lot of people do is they take this damaged shell of a person of themselves onto the next company. And they go straight into panic mode and like, I've got to go find another job. And they'll do whatever process they have, coffees, networking, recruiters, whatever it is, just to try to land that next job.
Yeah.
But they just do that from a place of weakness. And then they're not successful. Because often you want a strong CEO. You want someone who's coming from a place of strength. Hey, I'm amazing. I did this amazing job. I might be right for you. I might not be. You're selling to me as much as I'm selling to you.
Yeah.
And that's just a completely different mindset that most people lose. That'd be one is just kind of don't get damaged. Remember you're someone's equal as you go through this process. The other part, look, time's fantastic. I mean, I've worked full time for about 4 years. Originally, I was going to take a couple of months off, but then it's just dragged into 4 years and I'll never go back to full time work. But I would not have had that insight that I asked you to have that insight. I was a CEO of a tech company, $100 million business. The plan was go to a bigger company, bigger company.
Yeah.
And I would not have had the insight. So sometimes we accept that you don't have the insight to figure out what's best for you. Because sometimes you can't see things in a long arc of time. You just can't.
Yeah.
You can kind of roughly guess in a couple of years that's where you'll be. The last thing I might add to that is I wouldn't have advised for you to take that not-for-profit CEO role.
Yeah.
And that's just me with an external view, and I know nothing about it. On that day, if you had a coffee and you'd be like, "Oh, I'm thinking about this role," I'd be like, "I think you should hold out. I think you should hold out. I reckon you should, I don't know, get onto more boards, more consulting work, and just wait a couple more months just to wait it out."
Yeah. That's probably true. Yeah. There was one of the other things I'm curious your thoughts about is one thing that people said was, it'll all work out. But even though what we've talked a lot about today is confidence, and I thought it would all work out, there's still moments of doubt. I think my moments of doubt were just shorter. So I do have a lot of understanding for why people, you know, kind of lose that confidence because they do think it's just not going to work out.
Sometimes it doesn't. Like, it's all going to work out is only, people say that to make you feel better. And in a long arc of time, it probably does. But I've seen lots of CEOs have their career derail. They get fired and they just will never quite get up to that level. Often I've seen CFOs happen that as well.
Yeah.
Where they'll have an amazing job, get made redundant, get stuck in a global restructure, and they just never quite get back to that level.
Yeah.
So working out is not actually guaranteed. It's different if you leave voluntarily, because often then you've got the next role, you left on your terms.
Yeah.
None of that damage has come with you, and that next role is even better. But when you get stuck in a global restructure, which happens to everybody at some point in their career, and you grab that damage, sometimes it doesn't work out. And sometimes it's just a horrible experience. I've seen people's careers just spiral out of control.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think so the key takeaway from that probably just goes back to that, giving yourself time, working on, the clarity of what you're actually looking for next, and then mindset.
I think so. And my experience through my meditation that I do is that what actually happens is this, the stuff that gets stuck in your mind that you can't intellectualize your way out of, because it's stuck in a very deep part of the mind that's connected to the body but doesn't understand language. And the psychological damage that happens gets stuck there.
Mm.
And no matter how much you talk to somebody about how great they are, how well they've done, they'll never understand it on the deepest part of their mind. They'll intellectualize it, but they'll never understand it very deeply.
Mm.
So unless you go off and you do your 10,000 hours meditation like me, which
Yeah.
not many people do, the great thing to do is to not get damaged in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's what you did super effectively. Like when you had that phone call that said you're going to be made redundant, you would have felt something in your body.
Yeah.
Everybody would have totally felt something in your body. And when you feel that in your body, that's the chance that that emotion, which manifests as a physical sensation in the body, has its opportunity to get buried deep in your mind.
Mm.
And you, through your intellect or through your great experience, you chose not to let that happen.
Yeah.
And that was totally a choice. Because often what people do is they don't know, they feel it, they feel an aversion to that very unpleasant sensation, and then that gets locked in their mind. And it will stay with them their entire life. As I've experienced it.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I really should get back into meditation.
I recommend it for everybody. Last question on my side. That's all my guess. What is something that you've always known to be true that later on you actually found out wasn't?
Oh, that's a great question. It's a tough one, but I think that I've always believed in the idea of equality.
Explain that more.
Well, I believe in sort of fairness and equality, and that everyone should have the same rights as everybody else and the same opportunities. And I believe that I still believe it, but I'm less inclined to believe it now because I've seen inequality throughout my career in society and things like that. And so I've always had this hope that we would get there, and I'm not as sure anymore. And that's actually quite hard because it's a really fundamental part of who I am.
It's a deeply human thing to not have equality.
Yeah.
Like you got your platinum Qantas flyers, you got your gold.
Well, that's exactly right. Yeah.
I'm Indian. We created the caste system.
Yeah.
So we love not having inequality. So we love not having equality.
Yeah.
It's a very deep human thing. It's a horrible thing, but it's a deeply human thing that manifests in every society.
Yeah. And I think what I just hoped, and maybe it's not that we would have absolute equality, but I just hoped that, if I go back 30, 40 years, that would be further advanced. And I think we're not. And you're probably right. It's a deeply human thing. So, yeah, maybe I hoped that things could be fair for everybody. But what I've learned, and maybe the last 2.5 years has confirmed as well, is that it's not. And maybe that is okay. And the truth is that inequality has benefited me as well. Like, as you just said, if you're a platinum flyer, then, I'm always the first one. I want to get on the plane first, get my bag up. I take advantage of that too. So that's maybe it's just a reality check. Maybe the hopefulness of it has become more realistic.
It's a lovely romantic notion.
It is,
Lovely.
but I'm not going to totally give up on it. I just think that I think we can be better
We can
as
add to it.
humans.
Okay, awesome. Great. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do want to be a guest, make sure you hit me up and do follow me on socials and make sure you check out future episodes. Thanks, guys.